Hello and welcome to Total Saints Podcast. My name is Ben Stanfield. The fixtures have been released, the squad numbers agreed upon, and those shuttle runs completed. Yes, it's time for a brand new season of football, and we're back to help navigate you through the rollercoaster journey following Southampton Football Club. So expect a continued mix of expert opinion, humour, and if we're honest, no doubt some regular frustration. As always, we're going to be live streaming our podcast on a Sunday evening to both Facebook and YouTube, so a big welcome to everyone watching tonight. Then on a Monday morning, depending exactly where you're based in the world, you'll be able to find the audio version of the podcast via all the best cable providers and probably a few of the rubbish ones as well. So whether it's your first time watching us tonight or your 201st listening to us, we're incredibly grateful to have your company. Lastly, a massive thank you again to our TSP patrons who continue to underpin the show. Okay, on this first podcast of the season, we'll introduce some new TSP panel members, chat about Saints pre-season, reflect on several summer signings, including new owner of the Hallowed number 7 shirt. We'll discuss our overall hopes and expectations for the season ahead, and of course, give you next weekend's opening day trip to Tottenham Hotspur, ending with the now traditional wayward and or over-optimistic match predictions. If you're watching online, then please feel free to comment on any of those topics, particularly regarding your hopes and expectations for the season, and I'll do my best to mention them as we go. So good evening already to Mark, and anyone else that's out there wants to say hello, then we will do. Right, agenda item number 1, the TSP panel. To say that we've a couple of regular faces who are once again buckled in and ready to go. Steve Grant is the owner of SaintsWeb, and Glen Cour is the writer of the world-famous, his own words, League 1-10 blog. Glen, let's start with you. A good summer.
Good summer for me personally. Yeah, it's been all right. I haven't been on holiday yet, but yeah, so it's just been a continuation of the same with work and stuff like that. All very boring. I've zoned out of men's football. Been watching a bit of the women's Euros, including today's game, which was fantastic. Well done to everybody involved in that. Yeah, particularly enjoyed the last 5 minutes wasting time in the corner. That appeals to me greatly. Love that. Yeah, so well done to the women there. That's probably the highlight football wise of the last few months. Absolutely excellent. So yeah, looking forward to the new season starting. I think I don't tend to dip too much into pre-season. I stopped doing friendlies about 4 or 5 years ago, I have to admit, because I just found I wasn't enjoying them very much. So you'll probably have to talk to Alfie and Jacob for a more informed view on the friendlies. But yeah, it's nice to be back doing this on Sunday night, believe it or not. And yeah, look forward to the season ahead.
Good stuff. And just to square off the circle from last season, Glenn, what did you do with that lettuce from episode 200 in the end?
We ate it.
Little piece? Did you just?
No, it actually got eaten. So yeah, thanks to Brian Gunn for that particular for that particular trophy that I was awarded. It got eaten, and I'll try not to upset him this season.
Good stuff. And Steve, ready for another season of the more than likely high highs and low lows that we all enjoy with our beloved football club?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be dull, is it? It's been an interesting summer where kind of one of the things I mentioned at the live show was kind of these days the sort of currency for fans is signings, and we've to be fair, we've gone all out on those. We've made 6 first team signings, and yeah, done that without having to flog any of the crown jewels. So from that perspective, yeah, good summer. But it's been good to kind of have a down summer. I mean, ordinarily I'd have been spending most of it away at a World Cup. So to kind of not have that sort of stress and kind of travelling around all over the place has made a pleasant change, to be honest. So obviously bring that on in November and December instead.
Yeah, no, good stuff. Well, I know our listeners will be very pleased to hear Glenn and your dulcet tones again. Now, as many of you will know, Dan finished his TSP journey at the live show back instead venturing to Manchester to start a new role for The Athletic. Replacing Dan in the hot seat Athletic Towers is Jacob Tanswell, and along with Alfie, who we'll chat to in a moment, Jacob has kindly agreed to join the TSP panel for this season and share some of his insight and views as the football matches come and go. So very much a case of the king is dead, long live the king. Jacob, firstly, thanks for being part of the team this season. I wondered if the listeners that don't already know a bit about your journey over the last couple of years, your style of journalism, and what the last month or so has been like getting your feet under the desk athletic?
Yeah, so it's a quick run through. Basically, I played football until I was 16 at quite a good level. Realised very quickly that I was a lot better talking and writing about it than playing, which wasn't too difficult. Then, as I carried on playing football, my love for it wasn't quite as burning as it used to be, and so I started writing a lot. I used to write on the coach away game, stuff like that, and then I just started to freelance for whatever website would have me. Started covering Southampton in the 1920-2021 season, so a little bit of an overlap. Just doing it, off my own back, really, managing to go to lockdown games and stuff like that. So that's really fun. And then last year, I went away to down the south coast to Bournemouth. Really enjoyed that. I've got a soft spot for Bournemouth, and when Dan left, the opportunity was back, and it's one I couldn't turn down. But in terms of my journalism and the way I like to write, it's I got a tactics board for my 12th birthday, so I think you can kind of get a sense of what I really quite enjoy doing. I like to find the little details and I try to pick out the nuances a little bit more, and that's the type of thing I really enjoy doing. And hopefully I can do a lot more of that this season.
No, brilliant. And look, I know we'll talk a lot more about season comes and when Martin's back and that sort of thing. But just lastly for the moment then, Jacob, if people want to subscribe to your work on The Athletic that maybe aren't already, how or where can they go about that?
Yeah, so you can go onto The Athletic and then click on the Southampton icon and subscribe if you want to. There's also a link on my Twitter at @J_Tanswell as well.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jacob. And alongside Jacob is a friendly rival of his, Alfie House. I know that Alfie and Jacob know each other very well and get along very well, so we shouldn't have any hostile relationships on this pod, which is good. But Alfie writes for the Daily Echo, and like Jacob, will join the pod a couple of times a month to give us his opinion on what he's seeing or hearing on and off the pitch at St Mary's. Alfie, likewise, a big welcome to you. I know you've been covering for Saints a little while now, haven't you? So how have you found the journey over the last sort of 18 months to 2 years?
Yeah, cheers, Ben. So I've covered the club for over a year now for Daily Echo, but I initially covered both Bournemouth and Southampton as well. So there's that Bournemouth overlap with Jacob there. But they pretty quickly changed my role to Southampton only, which, with no disrespect to Bournemouth, that was what I always wanted to do. Southampton's a club I had passion for. I've lived here for the last sort of 4 years. But it's been great fun. They're a great club to cover, and like Steve alluded to, it's never dull.
Yeah. And do you get excited at this time of the season, Alfie, sort of thinking about the new season start? Or do you wake up in the middle of the night, cold sweat, thinking about Newcastle away on a whatever?
So I actually listened back to the episode 198 and 199 this week just to sort of get a feel for the podcast again. And it made me laugh listening to Glen and Steve a little bit. I tried really hard to forget how bad things were at the end of last season. And I think everyone in this panel has followed the club for their life. So, they've seen it all before. They weren't surprised. I perhaps have still got that misguided optimism maybe. And then the other way as well when things go poorly.
Yeah. And just so we're playing fair here then at the start, Alfie, I know the Daily Echo obviously offer a Saints Plus subscription service as well, don't they? So again, for anyone that's watching that isn't maybe a part of that at the moment, how do they go about that?
Yeah, so that's my colleague Benji. Benji runs a Saints Plus, but you can just go to the Daily Echo website. There's a Saints Plus tab there. You subscribe. We've got some good deals at the moment. And yeah, just if you want to follow me on my Twitter as well, all the coverage is there.
Yeah, brilliant. All right, lovely. Well, as I said, we very much look forward to having yourself and Jacob on TSP this season. So a big welcome from all of us. Let's get cracking under TSP patrons once again this season. This is episode 201 of the Total Saints podcast. There's no doubting it's been a busy summer of transfer activity at St Mary's, as Steve was mentioning. While long-term squad members like Fraser Forster and Shane Long have left for pastures new, Saints have completed at time of recording 6 new signings. Goalkeeper Gavin Bazunu from Manchester City, Liz, another Polish player, centre-back Armel Bella-Kotcher in Germany, midfielder Romeo Lavia, who joined from City as well, attacker Joe Aribo from Glasgow Rangers, who will follow the likes of Matt Letizia, Ricky Lambert, Shane Long, Andrei Kanchelskis, Thomas Haito in wearing the famous number 7 shirt. Lastly, young French striker Seko Mara, who left the wine region of Bordeaux for the fine region Southampton. Steve, we don't necessarily have time to go through every single one of them, but if you had to pick one out, who kind of excites you or intrigues you the most?
I think Aribo has kind of captured the imagination a little bit, hasn't he? With obviously with the goal yesterday in the last pre-season game, his performances have looked generally pretty lively, and I think he's in a position where we've lacked a little bit of creativity over the last 2 or 3 years. He's got a little bit of versatility, can play centre mid, can play out wide, can play up front. Just gives us more options and kind of keeps the opposition guessing, I suppose, a little bit more. Obviously, he's got European pedigree now with Rangers. Scored in the Europa League final in May. Played well throughout their campaign, getting all the way to that final. So yeah, I think the price we got him for just seems absolutely ridiculous. I know he only had a year left on his deal, but it still kind of feels like we've pulled Rangers' pants down a little bit there. So I guess that kind of given that we've been relatively used to doing that to Celtic over the last 10 years or so, that's starting to even up the balance a little bit in the old firm.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously with a fantastic goal yesterday, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a moment. And I think I saw Jacob tweet the other week that I think he played 70 matches for Rangers and Nigeria last year, one of the most worldwide used footballers or something like that. So it'll be interesting to see how he gets on. Glenn, what about you? Maybe if you don't pick Joe Aribo, then as Steve's spoken about him, and any of the others sort of stand out?
Yeah, Pompey's player of the season. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing him play. I just hope he gets given the nod. I just hope, there's been a lot of talk about bravery this summer with the, we used it in the kit launch in a slightly cringy way, but there's been a lot of talk about bravery in the summer, and it would be the brave decision to put him in goal. He's been the better goalkeeper in pre-season out of the ones that we've had, without a doubt. And it just looks to me like he's got something about him. And Fraser Forster did play pretty well at the tail end of last season, but it is a position that needed refreshing. And I just hope he's given the nod, and obviously hope he does well. And with the way the team looks like it's going to be set up, it looks like it's going to be sort of 3 centre backs and fairly solid. He should have a chance to do quite well. He looks a confident lad, and I'm looking forward to seeing him play. Partly, obviously, I want him to do well for Saints, but I'd quite like to see the fume from down the road if he does do particularly well. So yeah, I'd go for him. He was definitely needed, and like I say, I hope he starts.
And Jacob, there was a lot of chat towards the end of last season, even on here, that Saints would need to move swiftly this summer in the transfer. So, are you impressed how they've gone about their dealings with the player they've bought in?
I am. I like the proactivity because for as long as I've supported Southampton or followed Southampton, they've always tended to do 3 or 4 deals at most, really, in a summer, especially players that come straight into the first team. So the fact they've moved quickly, they've got players in core positions, and straight away you knew Sports Republic's model of recruiting young players. There's no second guessing. You're very clear, and it gives clarity to the squad, to the fans, to Ralph Hasenhüttl. So yeah, really impressed. It's a bit of a risk, because this summer will either fall flat on its face or it will thrive, and it may determine how the next couple of windows go. But overall, I like the intent, and I like to see an owner actually putting money into the club, which is always refreshing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think from memory, only Arsenal had a younger average age squad than. I think they were something like 24.9, we were 25.8 or something like that. And I suppose if you take Fraser Forster out and Shane, that's going to bring our average age down even more. So do you think Saints could or should maybe have looked to bring in 1 or 2 more experienced players? Obviously, the window's still open and they can do to maybe help with game management and organisation and things like that. Or do you think actually younger players with maybe a bit more, I suppose, less of a fear factor and a desire to prove themselves is actually the right way to go?
Yeah, I think in terms of strategy, clearly Sport Republic have got a little bit of cash, but if we're accepting that Southampton can't compete with the sort of top 8 or 10, then this model probably is the next best thing. It is a risk, but Jacob mentioned the communication, which I like about it, and the so-called experienced players, they could still come later in the window. There'll be players that are pushing for moves to the top 6 or European clubs, and when they can't get those, they then turn to the next best exciting project, which is Southampton at the moment. So I think it could still come. It is a risk, but I'm excited by it.
Yeah, I know Cameron Ward's here saying liking the signings, but would like some players who have let us down over the last years to be shipped on now. Maybe free up some more cash to bring in one or two more, one centre back and a striker. Aribo looks like the best bit of business so far. Penny Cotton, hey Penny, nice to hear from you as well. And then Petra Chores says, good to hear from you, gents. Big welcome to Alfie and Jacob too. Jacob, I was going to ask, obviously the window's open. I think Ralph said the other day to you, didn't he? How many days? 36 was it, or something like that? But, what do they need to do you think, to make the sort of 7, 8 or 9 out of 10 window become an 8, 9 or 10 out of window? What's sort of left in the pot, do you think?
I think the immediate answer is up front, isn't it? I think Ralph's pretty clear that he wants another striker. That's obviously the place that I think fans want as well, despite signing Sekou Mara. I look at that attacking that all those players in that final third, and I don't see that change of gear as such, or a player that can get the ball in that between the lines and just have that composure, similar to what Dusan Tadic used to do, who can just pick those passes through. There's a lot of rushing, and I really like Stuart Armstrong, but he doesn't sometimes just take a breath in front of goal. It's a little bit all too hurried. So having a player like that, a little bit of guile would be essential. But then you look into the fullback positions, and although they're using the wing backs now with Musa Djenepo, so they're kind of getting away with it to some extent. I wouldn't mind another fullback.
I can see Glen shaking his head already, Jacob. Yeah.
Because you think if Kyle Walker-Peters gets injured, then I think they're up a creek without a paddle. So I'd like to see a fullback for sure to be addressed.
Yeah, I don't think any of us recovered from that Sheffield United away game when he played left back first half and it was a car crash. That was about 3 seasons ago, and they're still trying it, Glen, aren't they? But there we go. Arts and Edit says we definitely need a new striker. But yeah. But Steve, I was just going to say, what about you? I mean, do you agree with the striker being needed? Is there anywhere else on the pitch that's still leaving you a bit nervous?
Yeah, striker definitely. I mean, we've lost 2 from last season and only gained 1. So yeah, I mean, just naturally there's a gap there, and kind of the kind of quality level of the ones that we do have all seem to be around about the same. You kind of think that Che Adams' ceiling is probably around 10 goals. Adam Armstrong has looked sharp in pre-season, to be fair to him, but you would also imagine that his kind of potential is around the same sort of level if things fall into place for him. We've got no real idea how Sekou Mara is going to do straight off the bat. I imagine he'll be eased into the team. I wouldn't expect to see him play regularly right at the start, to be honest. So yeah, there's definitely a hole there, and I mean, I still think we look suspects at the back in the centre of defence. We've got a lot of defenders who kind of have maybe one of the outstanding attributes that we need. So Jack Stevens has kind of got the leadership bit, but doesn't tend to do the other bits particularly well. Lianco's excellent at kind of intercepting and doing the sort of the dirty work, if you like. But his concentration can be a little bit iffy. He can lose his man quite easily and things like that. And Bednarek, who seemed, for all the money, seemed to be heading out of the club, and that's gone very quiet all of a sudden. And it seems as if we might now need to build back around him again. And I wonder whether kind of his head's in it really. He seemed very sort of out of it ever since that Man City game, that FA Cup game, where he basically decided he didn't fancy it. So we'll see on that. So I think there's a hole there. If we are assuming that Salisu is an automatic pick, which I think we probably are, but even he had a terrible end to the season. Bella Kotchap looks promising, but 20 years old. Can you throw him in from the start? I mean, I think Salisu was so good for so much of last season, largely because we didn't throw him in at the deep end. We gave him a year to develop and get kind of his head straight on how the game is played in this country, which was different to how it was when he was in Spain. And I wonder whether Bella Kotchap might need something similar, sort of in comparison to what he's had in the Bundesliga. So yeah, I personally would like another centre back. Whether that happens,
realistically though, we're not going to get in another centre back unless at least one leaves, because we've got 6 or 7 already. Yeah. If you go down to play people like Simiu and Valerie, and there's I think 7 off the top of my head we've got, which is obviously too many anyway.
We're counting Ollie Lancashire.
No.
and just finally on the signings then, Alfie, and I suppose thinking about that, that's the kind of the key for fans really. Is it, I mean, the only one that we've really probably going to play particularly over the age of 20 is Aribo. They're all very, very young. So I think has been as evident over this weekend with the Real game. It's about, fans being patient with some of these lads and giving them a chance. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take weeks, maybe months for them to adapt to playing for Saints.
Yeah, that's definitely right. But, fans have their right to expect that the team put out on, can perform to top level. They can expect that. But I think, with these guys, I mean, we've seen that at least 3 of them, the signings, are good players. Gavin Bazunu, Romeo Lavia, and obviously Joe Aribo, a bit older. They are good players. That's 3 good deals. And Armelo Bella-Kotchap is a bit similar to Salisu. I think me and Jacob were talking about the other day. He's very quick, sometimes rash, but he's got a great diagonal ball as well, which we saw on Saturday. They're all young, I give them time, but you're right to expect quality. You should hope for experience as well.
Yeah. Glenn, let's talk a bit about pre-season then and move on to that. Saints obviously visited Austria for a week where they played Leipzig and then Austria Klagenfurt before returning home with the fairly unentertaining 0-0 draw. Beat Monaco, which was obviously a good result, and then lost to a really, really good Villarreal side this weekend just gone. I know you've seen a fair bit of the pre-season, Glenn, both on the web and in person. Kind of what have you made of it, and has anyone sort of particularly stood out or any bodies?
What is a standard pre-season? I think after 45 years of watching this lot, I still don't know what a good pre-season is. This seems to have been a fairly standard one. I guess a good pre-season is no one's got injured, and the fitness has been built up. Yeah. I know they rattle it out like a cliche, but we have won every pre-season game before and then lost the first 6 in the Premier League and vice versa. So the results are really, not worth looking at. I think what you're looking for is patterns of play and maybe to fix some of the, or some sort of indication that the problems at the tail end of last year are going to be fixed. I mean, and let's face it, the tail end of last year, we couldn't defend and we couldn't attack. So there's lots to look at. So he's set up the team differently. I think possibly because at this moment in time, he doesn't trust Bella-Kotchap and Salisu to play in a flat back 4. So he's got to have a third defender in there. I like the look of, Lavia playing as the, he's a lot more dynamic than Romeo is in that role. So I was interested in a couple of the experiments, like Armstrong up front and Romeo pushed into a slightly more forward role. Overall, I think it's been good. Players that have shown up well. It was interesting in the Monaco game that though Monaco were terrible in the second half, Saints got a hell of a lot better once we started bringing on the players that you knew were going to play, that you largely expect to play in the first game. Mm-hmm. So, the players you expect to play well have played well. One from left field who I think has played reasonably well is Jan Valery. I think he's done a good job. He looks like he's got the bit between his teeth. And another thing I think about pre-season is that players that are on the fringes, and we've got a lot of those: Elianusi, Teller, Redmond, Valery, Lianco, Stevens. You want them to really be showing something in these games to say, I'm going to be a big player this season. And some have done it, like Valery I think has done it, but some others just haven't, and it's the same old. I will say that it does worry me, all the young players a little bit, because we're flying in the face of conventional football wisdom here, thinking that we can have all these young players and we're doing it individually. I mean, we joked about it slightly early on. Moussa Djenepo, I don't care how well he plays in friendlies. The guy is a liability. And what you want from your defenders is, if they make a mistake, you want it to be a surprise. If Kyle Walker-Peters made a mistake, you'd be genuinely surprised by that. If Djenepo makes a mistake, it's the most predictable thing ever. And I think it's a bit of a failing that we look likely to go into that first game against Spurs with him as essentially a defender, as proved in that Monaco game when he was on the corner of his own penalty area and he decided to try and nutmeg a striker. Now the fact that he even tried to do that is worrying, because if he tried to do it against Spurs. It's not going to end well, is it? So pre-season overall, yeah, I mean, I'm encouraged, but we're not there yet. We're not there yet. We could be a little bit blunt in front of goal. I could see us, maybe against the good sides, keeping it relatively tight and maybe only getting beat 1-0 or something like that. I don't, with the way we're going to set up, I don't see us collapsing. But what's going to define our season is how we do against the other 14. Have we got enough to win those games? Because this formation 3 at the back, whenever we've tried it before, it's not been particularly great. I'm thinking the Burnley away game last year where it was just atrocious. Hopefully we can find a way when we got Leeds at home pretty quick, haven't we? That's a game where we've got to have a goal threat. It's not enough to just keep it tight. So I'm still a bit concerned about us going forward, but all good teams are built from the back. So hopefully we get that sorted first.
Indeed. And Jacob, kind of linked to that, then we had a pretty good question from one of our listeners, Paul Scally, during the week, which kind of links sort of this section with the new signings. Paul said, I think our transfer window has been the best we have had for years. The players have great potential, but I have one concern. I can't see we have purchased players with a plan in mind. Am I wrong? So linking into sort of what Glenn said there, Jacob, do you feel that Saints, and specifically Ralph, are heading into the new Premier League season with a sort of clear and confident mindset, both in terms of the personnel and tactics? Or do you think there's almost still more questions than answers?
I think he's got a clear idea in terms of the setup, because he's played the same system. And I know he changed slightly second half yesterday with Joe Aribo slightly further forward, but it's been a back 3 throughout. And I was talking to Alfie yesterday. I'm really surprised he didn't once go back to his favourite 4-2-2 formation at any point during the pre-season. So I think there's clarity there. In terms of personnel, I'm not sure. I can guess the starting lineup, but I think it's kind of picking out of a hat the front 2, for example, because you see Stuart Armstrong up there. Is he going to start up there against Spurs? It's Che Adams, it's Adam Armstrong as well. So I think there are questions in that striking area, but also I think the midfield is pretty clear, because Romeo Lavia, I think he's been told, and Arsenal's been making no bones that he is the number 6, because he's got better mobility. He can operate around the pitch. He can shuffle side to side better than Romeo can. And the only problem for me though is Romeo is the best ball guy that keeps the ball the best in the midfield. I think he keeps things ticking over. He's really good at managing small spaces. When everything's tight, he can just keep it taken over. He's a metronome. And without him, I feel with Ward-Prowse, Lavia and Aribo, which looks like it's going to be the midfield 3, they don't have necessarily that control in midfield, which is key at some points, because if you're going to sit in a mid block like Arsenal has been preparing, at some point you need to keep the ball, and because you can't play 90 minutes without having possession and just being comfortable in that. So I think Romeo, there is a place for him, whether it's that box to box running in behind that he has done sometimes in pre-season. I'm not too sure, but yeah, going back to your point, personnel, I think that's to be decided.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be the first time. I think was it a couple of years ago when he was playing 3 at the back all through pre-season? We rocked I think played 4 at the back and got wiped away 3-0 in the second half, didn't we? Something like that from memory. But Steve, I was going to say, look, one positive obviously is we saw an absolutely brilliant goal from Joe Aribo yesterday against Villa, doing that number 7 shirt some justice. We obviously spoke earlier about potentially the type of player he is, but I think that's someone that will get us on the edge of our seats and has already shown in pre-season of what he can offer the team.
Yeah, he seems to be the one that can kind of magic something out of nothing, which, I mean, as I said, we haven't really had, certainly since Tadic left. I guess Redmond does it maybe 2 or 3 times a season. But I mean, at this level, I think you need a little bit more than that, really, as we've discussed kind of ad nauseum, really. But yeah, if he's able to kind of provide that link, provide a few more goals from midfield, lay some chances on the plate of the strikers, actually give them a little bit more kind of raw material to work with, then yeah, we can look a lot better as an attacking force. Certainly last third of the season we were pretty anemic going forward, and that basically just allowed teams to attack us at will, knowing that we weren't going to be able to kind of fight back at the other end. They weren't leaving the door ajar for us, really, because they knew we didn't have the tools to hurt them. Whereas now with Aribo in that position, offering just kind of a bit of all sorts, really. All of a sudden, we look like there's going to be a little bit more threat, and hopefully, I mean, if one of our existing strikers can start firing, then brilliant. If not, then hopefully someone else who arrives before the end of August.
Yeah, Arped says our left was painfully silent against Villarreal, so that's not a good reference in terms of Gineppo. But Alfie, just final question on pre-season. One player who seemed to be performing particularly well out in Austria, including the assist for Adam Armstrong's goal against Leipzig, was Will Smallbone. I know Glen's a fan of Will Smallbone and was quite keen to see what he might be able to do for the Saints this season, but they've since let him out on loan to Stoke. Are you surprised by that, or does it feel like actually that's a good move for all parties?
No, I'm probably not surprised because the squad's already so bloated and there's already enough players that are quite good but not good enough to change a game in the squad. But I really like Will on the ball. I think he's one of the better players at the club, and his deliveries are good, which is a shame because obviously James Ward-Prowse sort of has a monopoly on that. But I'm looking forward to seeing how he gets on in the Championship. I saw that he was on the bench on Saturday, which I was surprised by. And I think so was Gavin Kilkenny, who's a good young player. And they've got a good team there. If they start playing those players, they'll do well. But I'm excited to see how he gets on.
And rumours of signing a certain Liam Delap as well, from I think Dan was alluding to. So there'll be another player going there as well, won't there? But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he gets on maybe in a full Championship season. So looking ahead to this season for Saints then, Jacob, what are your sort of one or two hopes or expectations for them? What do you think realism should be for Saints fans this season?
My main hope is obviously, of course, safety, but consistency. I'm fed up of getting carried away thinking Southampton look a really cohesive side. They could push that top 8. They could push top 8, and then all of a sudden 1 win in 12, and then you think, oh, it's faded out again. So I just want a little bit more consistency. Even when you're not playing well, just get a draw. Don't get hammered 6 or 7-0 once a season, or the 9, which we've seen before, obviously. But I'm really hoping that these young players bear fruit, because if they do, and Southampton getting that USP right, and this can show young players for the next 2-3 seasons that Southampton have got a formula here and it can work. And if they do get it right, the potential is vast. So those are my main two hopes for sure.
Yeah, there was quite a few negatives, wasn't there? Second half last year. One positive, we didn't lose 9-0 last season, so that's a step in the right direction. Steve, what about you?
I kind of actually think the opposite. I quite like it that we have the highs and lows, because it would be boring if we were just a sort of mundane team just jobbing about in mid-table with no real purpose about ourselves. I mean, yeah, sure, you don't want the real lows of, as you say, the 9s and that Chelsea game last year could easily have been 9 if Chelsea could have been bothered to play the last half hour. So yeah, I mean, I think cutting out the big lows, but kind of pushing the average up slightly, to just give us a bit more, so we kind of don't look quite so rubbish when we are bad. I think is kind of just the most brutal way of saying it, because yeah, when we are really bad, we are just eye-bleedingly terrible. And yeah, if we can just remove those kind of the outliers at that end of the spectrum, then you kind of have less to complain about, I think. Which kind of begs the question why we're still here, but but no, I think realistically, it's keep our eyes over, kind of looking back over our shoulder a little bit, but not worry too much. Got to look forwards, and there's a lot of bang average teams in this league that we should be looking to be sort of at least maintaining parity with, if not going past at some point in the next 2 years. But it might not be immediate with the young players we've got. Looking forward to seeing how they all develop as a team, because there's clearly a lot of talent and a lot of promise there. But as Alfie said, that it's just not really the template for what you do at this level. It feels high risk, but then maybe there's high reward at the end of it. So who knows?
Yeah. is that for you the same case? Is it about what Saints do, or is it more about what they don't do? Going through those extended runs, as Jacob said, sorry, not picking up many points and losing game after game after game, becoming more consistent.
Yeah, I think so. But I mean, the first thing they say about young players is that it brings more inconsistency. So who knows? Maybe it'll be even worse. Maybe we will get some complete thumpings at some point this season if it all goes a bit wrong. If 3 or 4 of the youngsters have a nightmare on the same day, it could be horrible. Personally, for the season, Jacob's first answer says it all for me. It's about staying up. But I know I said this at exactly the same point last year. I'd like to have a season where we're not looking over our shoulder at any point thinking we could get dragged into this. Going back to Steve's point, there are some dreadful sides in the league this year. Bournemouth, and Fulham are going to be down there, and Forest, no matter how much they spend on Jesse Lingard, they're going to be down there. And then you're looking at Leeds, you're looking at Brentford. There's quite Brighton seem to be losing all their players.
Everton still rubbish.
Everton's still rubbish, and they've got no money to spend. So it's and Man United, of course. So there's no reason you would hope that we would get seriously dragged into it. But our fixtures are tough at the start of the season. So it would be nice to get a couple of wins on the board relatively early. And I think that would settle everybody down and give everybody the confidence that we can go and have a reasonably good season. I don't expect to qualify for Europe or anything like that. It would just be nice to be sitting around 10th to 14th than sitting around 15th all the way down.
Yeah. And Alfie, that's the challenge really, isn't it? I mean, it's what Spurs, Man United, Leicester, Chelsea in our first 5 games. Certainly not an easy start. I appreciate everyone always says, don't they, the cliche of there's no easy games and things like that. But given that run at the end of last season, which I do feel we should draw a line under, it's a new season, new team, etc., plus those fixtures, plus the amount of money we spent this summer, the pressure's going to be on Ralph straight away, really.
It's incredibly worrying for those that believe his job is still on the line so early on. The Leeds game is going to be enormous. In my opinion, because I don't expect them to beat, to be honest with you, any of the other 4 teams you've named. Personally, I don't believe that his job is on the line. I think we can draw a line under it. I think for the first 2-3 months, it's a case of this is a new team and all the players are young. I don't think you can go and spend 50 million, 60 million, however much they spend on young players and expect them to perform straight away. There's clearly a project there in mind. But in terms of those first few games, I mean, I'm not expecting much joy.
Yeah. Well, Sengig Tully 1 says really can't see us getting 40 points, so that's put a dampener on things, hasn't it? But there we go. Let's move on to preview with the final part of the pod around the first game of the season. Then away to Spurs. Obviously, it was undoubtedly one of the highlights there last season, Glen. I think we could probably live off that for a few years. 3-2 win up there, can't we? Possibly a different type of test this time, particularly as I know Steve always talks about this time of year, the fact that we won 2 opening day games in, I think, 23 seasons or something.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's entirely relevant. But Spurs are one of the teams that are undoubtedly going to be better than last year. They are definitely moving in the right direction as far as they are concerned. So I think it's probably good to play them first up, and hopefully they won't have everything sort of like established and in how they're going to play and what players they're going to play and all that stuff. It's basically they've got an exceptional manager, and he is recruiting what look on the face of it to be exactly the right players to suit the system that he wants to play. So Basuma, I'm thinking of in particular, is an excellent signing in midfield. You do wonder what that means for Mr. Højbjerg.
Massive upgrade on him.
Yeah, it is. So I mean, Basuma's a very good player. Richarlison, he always scores against us. Luckily, he's apparently suspended, so that's good. But they've still got the other 3 lads up front who aren't bad either. So
and they all score against us as well.
Yeah, they all score against us as well. So it's an incredibly tough first game. But to be honest, I'd rather be playing them now than in a couple of months. So we just got to go out there and give it a good go. I think we'll set up to be solid. I personally think the midfield 3 will be. I think Romeo will play with Lavia and Ward-Prowse, and Aribo will be up front with someone. So I think it'll probably be Adam Armstrong if I had to guess, because that team doesn't have a lot of pace in it. And for some reason, I mean, I don't know what everyone else thinks about this. I don't really think Ralph rates Che Adams that much. I've thought that since we played Leicester in the FA Cup semi-final, where he got left out for that, which was obviously our most important game that season, and he played Nathan Redmond up front instead, and it just seemed bizarre at the time. And Adams seems to get judged more harshly for me than some of the other players. So I don't think Che Adams will start. It'll be if one of the strikers does start, it'll be Adam Armstrong. But I just hope we go give a decent account of ourselves, and that we have a goal threat, because we're not just going to be able to camp in our own half and see the game out and nick a point. That's incredibly unlikely we'll be able to do that. So looking forward to it. I'm making the trip up there as long as the tickets arrive, and so I'm looking forward to that, because I haven't been to their new ground yet. But not expecting the result won't get in the way of a decent day out.
Yeah,
put it that way.
That's good. And Alfie, Glen and Steve sort of made a good point there, or Glen did, sorry, that, maybe getting one of the big boys away from home and getting that out of the system early doors, when maybe you can catch them cold, some new players trying to gel. I know they lost their last game of the preseason against Roma and things like that. So, yes, they've got some really, really good players, but I'm clutching at straws a little bit, Alfie, so hopefully you can help.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that I'm confident of a positive result, but I'm excited for the game. But I don't. It's a tough game for anybody. Spurs are going to be quality this season. Antonio Conte is one of the best managers in the world, in my opinion. So there's going to be no shame if they turn up there and they lose again on the opening day. Glenn said that it doesn't matter, but I think Spurs have won 4 or 5 of their last opening day matches. It'll be a good day out, and hopefully it'll be a good match. And like Glenn says, if they don't sit behind the ball for 90 minutes, it'll be good fun. But I won't be disappointed if they don't get a result.
Jacob, how much confidence do you think Ralph and the team can take from that game, earlier in the year? Obviously, it was I think all of us after that game was thinking, this is a team that's finally arrived and they can go on a run to the end of the season and challenge the top 8. Obviously, that didn't happen, but, they've got that sort of winning mentality from that ground just a few months ago.
I think that experience should help them, but also the other game as well, the reverse fixture, because if I remember, before Salisu got sent off, they played a back 3 and they went 1-0 up. It looked really quite effective as well. Jan Valery came in and I thought he had one of his better games as well. So perhaps now we're deviating away from that back 3, or going towards it, sorry. That could be used as a template, that from last season, that 1-1 draw at St Mary's. So I think both those games should stand Ralph and the team in good stead, because they're both against Antonio Conte, and they worked, for the large parts, really, and it looked like they were a goal threat as well. So, I think it's huge confidence, and there's nothing to fear. Like Alfie touched on there, it's the first game of the season. You're not expected to get anything. I just like to see a little bit more goal threat, like you say, and also hopefully a few more encouraging signs about that back 3 as well.
Yeah. And Steve, I know you're a man that's very much always up on his Premier League rules. Obviously, it's the first game where Saints and Ralph will be able to use 5 subs, of course, as part of the new regulation this season, something that he was in favour of. So how do you think that's going to go?
I mean, I don't know. I don't understand for the life of me why any manager of a club not in the top 6 would be in favour of this rule. It's insane that we voted in favour of it, and it's insane that enough of the other smaller clubs voted in favour of it, because the only people it helps is the bigger clubs who can now stockpile massive squads and know that even if things aren't going quite to plan, they can bring up to 5 alternative £50 million players off their bench to make sure that no surprises happen. It's a wholly negative thing for the league. It's a wholly negative thing for clubs of our size. I mean, Ralph may have some reason that he's not kind of furnished us with as to why he thinks it'll be good for us. I mean, I'm yet to hear it.
You can get Nathan Redmond and Theo Walcott on the pitch.
Great. I mean, the only benefit to it, where they've now decided that the bench will be 9 players, that gives us more options, because it means you don't have to basically choose your most versatile players for the bench. That's one vague positive for every level. But I don't see the benefit to it. And I mean, is our squad deep enough to really have that many game changers? not quite, I don't think. So at the moment, I mean, unless we pull a couple of rabbits out of the hat between now and the 31st of August, I don't really see the benefit for us at the moment.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see as the season goes on, doesn't it? Okay, as many of our regular listeners will know, before each game we always get the panel to predict the match score. There are points awarded for correct results and even more points for correct scores. Alex, our producer, thankfully looks after all of that, so I don't need to worry about it these days. But from memory, I think Dan won last year. Obviously, he's gone now, so it's all to play for. I know Glen's always well up for this. So what we're going to do in terms of our sort of initial game is we'll get our guests to go first, obviously Alfie and Jacob. So in alphabetical order, Alfie, that means you. So kicking off your debut pod, Spurs versus Saints, what score are you going to go for, Alfie?
I feel bad because I am very much looking forward to the game. I think it'll be good fun, but I'm going to say 1-0 Spurs.
1-0 Spurs, all right. Jacob, what about you?
I did say 1-1, but I'm thinking about it with my actual head. I'm going to go 2-0 Spurs.
Yeah, revert to type. That's good. That's what I've gone for as well, actually. So.
Sudden slap in the face of realism.
Exactly. Yeah, I was thinking 2-0 Spurs, so perfect. All right. Glenn, what about you?
Okay, I'm going to take a different approach. I'm not going to. So if you ask me last, I'm not going to pick the same result anyone else was going to pick. So I was going to go 1-0 Spurs. What did Jacob say? 2-1.
2-0.
2-0. I'll go 2-1 Spurs.
2-1 Spurs, all right. Senkid Tully 1 has gone 5-0 Spurs. So I'm not sure if that's a Spurs fan that's watching us or very pessimistic. I think that's the same person that didn't think we were going to get 40 points. So it's going to be a long season for Sengun Tully 1. But there we go. Steve, to cap it, what are you reckoning?
Yeah, I think the defence just isn't quite up to stopping Kane and Son at the moment. Even when our defence was good, we struggled to deal with them. So probably not going to be a happy start. 3-1.
3-1. I've made Harry Kane my fantasy captain. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it goes and what happens and how close or not those predictions are. Obviously, we'll find out next weekend. Okay, that's pretty much it for the first pod of the season. Don't forget that you can follow Total Saints Podcast on Facebook and Twitter. It's just at Total Saints Pod. We're on YouTube, all those various podcast channels, and we have our own website, totalsaints.co.uk, which includes a link to our online shop for Total Saints icons. Should you like to get in touch, then either comment on any of our posts, send us a DM through your preferred social media tool, or email totalsaintspodcast@yahoo.com. We're also on Patreon, where should you wish to, you can support the podcast with a monthly contribution. Just visit patreon.com, which is patreon/Total Saints Podcast. We have 4 tiers ranging from £5 to £20 per month. Each come with their own perks, including weekly shout outs for those patrons in our Francis Benali tier and the newly named Mick Shannon tier. For any new £15 Francis Benali or £20 Mick Shannon patrons who join between now and the end of August and remain active until the end of the season, you'll get sent a unique TSP t-shirt. I know Alex has been working hard over the summer. I got a note from someone the other day saying that they'd received theirs in Canada, so I promise you that we will ship them wherever you are in the world. So thank you to Dave Melton, Mark Atkins, Matt Hall and Nick Reed in the Francis Benali tier, and also thanks to Colt Baker, Dave Ernsberger, Ed Busy, Nick Hinkston and Phil Cook in our Mick Shannon tier. We'll also be running our patrons-only Fantasy Premier League again this season. Back-to-back champion Tom McCann, the man to beat. I'll leave Martin to fill in with some more details on that over the coming weeks. Just to say, the final sort of predictions coming through. Arpad said 1-1 with a Prowse penalty. Josh has said, thanks for the podcast, boys. And Carl Andrew has said, glad to have the pod back. So my thanks to the chaps for joining tonight. To all of you watching online, hopefully my dodgy internet that the guys have been reminding me throughout the show has just about coped with it. And we'll look forward to catching up with you all again through the week after the Spurs game. So have a good week and thanks very much for listening.